Welcome. She said, my name is Patty Leino. I work for Tyler Technologies with our ERP and Schools division. We're based in Yarmouth, Maine. I actually work out of the Falmouth, Maine office, and this is my 24th year with Tyler. My current projects, we most recently went live on Dynamics CRM Online last year. It was a pretty big project for us, the first of its kind. I'm currently the project manager for implementing Coveo, both for our internal use for staff as well as for clients. And my next projects will include KCS, which I don't know how many of you have implemented KCS at your organizations. So we'll all be doing it first time together, and knowledge management. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about our journey for Dynamics CRM and Coveo. I'm starting with this quote because KCS is a journey. One of the things we pride ourselves on at Tyler Technologies is our longevity. In my group, our management group has an average tenure of 15 years, which we're very proud of. And that's a lot of knowledge, but it's in my head. So you can't come see me every day, every time you have a question. It doesn't scale. So there really has to be a better way. And we're looking toward knowledge-centered support with Coveo as a core to succeed at that goal. So as I said, who is Tyler Technologies? We are a provider for the public sector, so the cities, state, counties, schools, authorities. We currently have nearly 4,000 employees helping 126,000 clients and their constituents through their use of our software. We have everything from paying your bill, to getting a ticket, to going to court, to getting paid, to online getting your tax bill. All of that information comes under the Tyler Technologies umbrella. So as I mentioned, we pride ourselves on our longevity. In my particular group, and it's true across all of our acquisitions, we have sometimes 3 or 4 decades worth of information and clients who have been with us for that length of time. Tyler's been around since 1966, and in 1997, we really focused on the public sector, and we began a series of strategic acquisitions so that we could begin to build the core that we were looking for the public sector clients. Every time we acquire a company, we end up with a lot of data. So we end up with decades of data in a variety of systems, in a variety of technologies. And that's where we are today. So it's overwhelming for our support agents. And if you were in the keynote this morning and we talked a little bit about that knowledge, making sure that your agents have the information so that it's scalable. You don't want to scale by adding staff. It's the most expensive part of your business is your payroll expense. So we're really looking to provide that better experience for our client and for our agents, and to be able to rein in all of this information. So how do we rein it in? I'm going to talk a little bit about our process, and here is an example of the software that my division puts out. This is our Munis software. It started back in the early 80s in COBOL. Some of you may recognize COBOL. I'm showing my age. And this is our product as it goes through the relational database, right from the dumb terminal with multicolor down to a little more current experience. And here is the current release of our software today. A little cleaner look, a little easier to use, a little more contemporary. But if you think about it, our knowledge has gone through the exact same transition. So we started with paper manuals, and then we put information on CD-ROM. That was very exciting. Then we used HTML help files, and now we're embedding the help within the product with WalkMe. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that particular product. And then, of course, we saw this morning in the keynote some of the fantastic things that Adobe's doing that now maybe we can look at doing with Coveo as well. So there's a lot of interest in walking through where our knowledge has been and where it's going. So the way that we rein it in is with the Tyler Support Council. And the Tyler Support Council represents our vice presidents and directors from each of our major divisions, as well as working with our IT, our corporate IT and marketing. So the Support Council has a couple of different goals. They look at processes, and they also look at tools. So from a process perspective, we standardize on an incident survey using HDI CSI's survey tool. We created a metrics scorecard that has backlog, attrition, margin, and customer satisfaction that we all report on each quarter, so all the division presidents receive the same information. We have an industry benchmark process. We use TSIA to do that. We created the first Tyler loyalty survey. We've only done one because it was very, very long. So we're really looking at another way to figure out how to get loyalty across the breadth of service that we have. And then we created an organizational alignment of our support structure, meaning that if I look at an email signature from someone else in technical support from another group, I can relate what I do to them based on the title structure. We also needed to standardize our tools. So we started first with a phone system so that we could start to really improve that client service experience by all having that same phone system. Then we looked at adding a community. We call it Tyler Community. It's a intelligent platform. It's our social support. We've had that for a number of years. And then we standardized our support website. So as you can imagine, we grow, there's some organic growth, but there's also growth through acquisition, which is fairly significant for us. And every time we acquire somebody, they have their own website. So we brought that in, we standardized on a platform a number of years ago so that everybody's support page looks similar. And then we have the Dynamic CRM Online selection that we made 2 years ago. We then acquired Coveo. We're now in Cloud V2, and we're looking next to do knowledge management. So our journey began with starting to select Microsoft Dynamics CRM Online. We needed to make a choice. We really felt in order to be successful with KCS, we were going to need to have a standard incident system. And so this was our selection that we made. At the time that we made this choice, it looked like Microsoft was going to do only in the cloud. They're really now more first in the cloud. But that was something that was very attractive to us. So in our previous system, which we had for 10 years, we highly customized it, and then we didn't take a single vendor upgrade for 10 years. Thank you. That's what it felt like. So you know what happens, right? We're not talking an upgrade. You're talking basically a migration or a major re-implementation, and that's where we were at. So we needed to make a selection process. So we don't necessarily have a preference for the cloud, but what we're definitely finding in the cloud, and you heard some of the reasons to choose cloud this morning's opening sessions, but also the constant ability to take the upgrade, to get the newest information, to leverage that information was very attractive to us. So we actually went live on Dynamics CRM last February, which was interesting, so a year ago February, because we took 4 CRM systems, 2.5 million cases, and went live on the same day, which was a very interesting process for us. But since then, we have upgraded once. We upgraded last October to CRM 2016, and then this year we'll upgrade either to 365 in the fall, the 2017, or we may wait until February. It depends, but you need to stay current. So our intelligent community is also in the cloud, which is very comfortable for us. We love the Cloud V2 here for Coveo, and we recently migrated to 365 for our email as well as our SharePoint. So we're really becoming very comfortable in the cloud. So we have a multi-phased approach. As you saw from that earlier slide, our agents are a little overwhelmed with decades of information. It really is a little bit of a challenge. So what we want to do first, is there anyone in the room who's using Dynamics CRM? So one of the things that we found is there's no search. So we've been live for 16 months on CRM, our incident management system, with over 3.5 million cases, and we can't find anything. So we implemented Coveo in March, and we had an opportunity to actually search our legacy system. So our agents now are using Coveo to search our legacy system. So those cases are 16 months old and older. So that's obviously our first priority. So the first thing we're doing with Dynamics is we're actually crawling the cases, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Then we'll move on and we'll bring in other entities, accounts, sales information, because we also just migrated our sales folks from Salesforce.com to Dynamics CRM. So that's all been taking place together. And then what we'll do is we'll integrate Coveo into CRM, and I think if you were just in the last session, you saw a little bit of a preview of what's coming in the fall release, both with the Microsoft and with the Coveo release, so it's going to be very exciting. And then finally, we'll offer that fantastic search to our clients so that they can begin to search their cases in web self-service. So our phase 1 objectives, and this is, again, we definitely are baby stepping this with, my heart's in support. So we're looking at our support agents. What can we give them very quickly to get the best value and the best experience for them? So we are focusing on the benefits and technical support. We're going to index our cases and our related entities. We're going to provide access to case knowledge to our agents so that they can get that information as soon as possible. And then we really needed to look at some return on investment, right? Because you have to go and get funding for these projects. So when I went through my process to look for knowledge management, which led us to go to CRM first, that's where our industry was focused, that's where our leadership was focused, and I happened to come across Coveo. Because what I found in the knowledge management is that there was very little high-level or enterprise-level search, and if there was, it was proprietary. So in the process, I found Coveo and really needed to bring this in as part of our experience. And we didn't really have a good justification for it. So fortunately, the folks at Coveo actually spun up a proof of concept for us. So we very quickly in my division took 3 repositories, no serious indexing, just a basic crawl, no facets, and it was less than 30 days that we put this all together. I then took that proof of concept, went into our live case system, took 3 cases out of our system section. So our products are aligned by module. System is like the calls that rot. Nobody wants them because nobody knows what they are. They might be workflow, they might be imaging, they might be security. Everybody's afraid of them. I took 3, and again, we spun up a very quick instance. In 1 to 3 seconds for each of those calls, I was able to find an answer and close the case on first contact. So my personal experience in that proof of concept was that first contact resolution and customer satisfaction increases could be achieved very quickly with this tool. So here's a little bit about our metrics. My goals for this project were to put a 10% increase on first contact resolution and a 0.1 increase on our customer satisfaction. So if you look at our journey, quarter 1 was no Coveo. Quarter 2 is Coveo searching some help files and our old cases, but not CRM. And quarter 3 will include dynamic CRM because we expect to go live at the end of this month. So for the first contact resolution, just those few months of having Coveo for our help files, a little bit of an older knowledge base, and our legacy cases, we're already almost at a 10% increase. And that's without the dynamic CRM. So I'm very excited where that's going. And then in our industry, this is on a scale of 5. In our industry, a 4.4 is industry average, so we're at 4.66 in Q1. We're already at 4.69 so far this month. I'm not really expecting that to change too much on this quarter, but I'm looking for that to change in quarter 3. So I'm pretty excited about where I think we're going to be going once we have the cases in Coveo. So let's talk a little bit about the steps that you need to go through to include Coveo Cloud and Dynamic CRM Online. And it's fairly straightforward. You're going to first create a read account because you have to be able to crawl information. And then you're going to make a decision on enabling auditing. So one of the features we have is auditing to be able to detect deleted cases without a rebuild. And that will be a great feature. Now it is optional, and it's actually turned off when you first come in because when you're building your test areas and beginning your startup, you really don't want that turned on. So we'll turn that on after we've finished getting our repositories live. And then you're going to install the plugin, which is pretty straightforward. If you've not worked with Dynamic CRM Online, it's not like On-Prem where you just put that plugin on your server. There's a mechanism. It's a fairly straightforward mechanism for getting that plugin applied. And I've included the links to the Coveo help on that. The documentation is fantastic. They will walk you through everything, but it's also nice to know that you have that documentation to support it. And then you need to configure the source. We need to figure out what we're going to connect to and how we're going to connect using that new connector, and select the items to index, which sounds very simple. And actually, the mechanics of these steps are very simple. But what's not simple is where the work is, which is the decision. So you have some decisions that you need to make. First, you need to decide where you're going to connect, which is a fairly extensive decision. It turned out to be a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And then you're going to determine what entities you're going to be mapping in and what items you're going to be indexing. So I'm going to go over each of those in a little more detail. For our connection decisions, you first need to pick an environment. Now we're looking at a test environment to get started. Obviously, you know you're going to be on your live environment when you get to production. But as you begin this process, you're going to need some test environments. And you may want more than one. In our experience, we had multiple test instances, but we did not have a small one. So I've already explained we have millions of cases, which then means we have millions of notes. And so one of the things that we didn't actually have that we probably should have had was a very small test instance to go to. So my recommendation would be, depending on the level of customization you have in your Microsoft environment and depending on the volume of data that you have, you're probably going to want to have a smaller test area. And we were fortunate, actually, Coveo set that up for us so that they would have one. I'll show an example of that. The other challenge that we had is we had competing projects. So we had a number of initiatives taking place at the same time. We were already live in support on Dynamics CRM. We then made 3 major acquisitions with a 4th this year, so we needed to integrate those support organizations into our current organization. And we migrated our entire Tyler Salesforce from Salesforce.com with a go-live beginning in February of this year into Dynamics CRM. So that meant that we were all trying to use test at the same time. What does that mean? You've got to manage refresh schedules. So we have 2 different kinds of refresh schedules. The first one is we're using Parature for our online portal. That has an automatic, because that's cloud, it has an automatic refresh on the 1st and the 15th, so you've got to work around that. And then every time the integrator needed to bring in a sales group or another group of data for the support migrations, you had another set of refreshes. So as with any project, communication becomes really important. It's not that hard, but it's hard if you don't talk to each other. Once you've figured out where you're going to be working to set this up, then your IT staff will be able to install the plugins. So that part's very, very straightforward. The second connection decision you need to deal with is security. So in our world, we do use an O365 authentication, but then we have an extra special ADFS authentication on top of that. I can say that. I really can't describe it to you and tell you what it means. I can just tell you it's extra work. So if you have some security, additional security, other than one of the base authentications that you've seen in your Coveo, then you're going to need to take that into account when you're creating that crawling account. And I've included, again, a link, and the slide deck will be available to you after Impact is over. But I've included a link to the information on the crawling account. And again, they will help you through everything. Coveo has been wonderful through the process. There's also some excellent documentation here that you can take advantage of. The last piece of security is the security within CRM itself. Now, this is in our phase 1, we're really focused on our agents. So we're only bringing in cases and that related information that our support agents need to find information to solve customer questions. So anybody who can log into CRM can see a case. There's no security on it for us. So we don't have to deal with a lot of CRM security in this first phase. We will when we go into more sales information and opportunities and things that not everybody can see. So depending on your setup and whether or not you're compartmentalized, you might have additional security that you need to deal with. The next area of decisions is entities and mappings. So I'm going to show you a little bit of the default page, and I've included the link on the previous slide. But with the connector come a certain level of default entities and fields in the schema that you're going to get automatically from the connector. So I started with that, and then I needed to look at what did I have for custom entities and custom fields that I was going to need for this first phase. And then once I got to that process, then I could exclude the stuff that I didn't need so that I could make it more efficient. And it's important when you're considering the level of overhead and the amount of time you want to take to spin up the instance. So there were a couple of things that I had to consider. First was I used basic information. We have case, we have accounts, we have contacts. Those are out of the box, basic information. But then we have custom on top of that. First thing we have custom is our notes. We're not using CRM notes, So we have a custom notes and a custom activity pointer that relates the notes to the case. Then we also use Jira. I don't know if you're familiar with that for our development tickets. So we have a linked Jira issue that links the case so we can see that defect information. And then we also have Jira issue details. So we had some custom tables that needed to come in as well. The other thing we had to figure out was really what were we going to need for the indexing. So in the indexing decisions, it's helpful if you understand the relationship indexing, because the first question they're going to ask you is, what do you want to index? And that's an overwhelming question, but don't be overwhelmed because it will walk you through the whole thing. But what I had to think about was, how was I going to use it? What kind of information did I want to have? So with relationship indexing, what that means is that Coveo is able to index the information you need because of the relationship with an entity that you're already indexing. So take contact, for example. Let's say that I want to see all of Patty's cases. I want to search for cases that have a certain type of issue that Patty was involved in. You would think that I might have to index contact. Well, I don't, because I have a case. It's tied to a customer who's the account and has a primary contact, which is your contact table. So by that relationship, through that one index of cases, I'm able to get that person, that contact's information. So that's just one example of relationship and how you're going to pull that information in. Another example might be state. Some of the products that we have different instructions based on the state that you're working in. It might be a state retirement, like a payroll retirement, or it might be a land-based application, like a tax billing system. So I need to know the state. Well, if you were to look at my case screen, you wouldn't see state anywhere on the case. However, the customer that's tied to it, the account, you have a primary address one state or province field in that table. That's where my state is. I don't have to index that directly. I can take that relationship from the case through the account to include it. So thinking about the kinds of things, what kind of information are you going to want to search on? And how do you want to bring that in will help you to determine whether or not you can use the relationship indexing or whether you have to go in and directly index. So one of the examples for us for direct indexing is we have that custom activities. When an agent is searching for information and they want to find cases that are similar, they're going to have the case title, which will be fine in the case, but we're also going to need that activity information, the notes, the body of the activity for that case. That's going to be a separate indexing. So you really just need to think about the kinds of things that you're going to want to look for and then look at your setup, your custom information, and figure out what you need to do to add that together. Quick look at our sources. This is actually our test area. As I said, we're not quite live. We hope to go live by the end of the month. That first one just shows you the 3-item area that Coveo actually spun up so that they could test the extensions and the folding. I'll talk a little bit about folding in a moment. And then these are our 2 primary repositories or sources that we've brought in. The first is the cases, which is about 3.1 million right now. And then the activities, when I took the print screen, it's at 1.5 million. We're at 7.3 million and counting. I think we're about 60% done. So we're still crawling to build it into our test areas so we can start to do some actual testing with it. So this is an example of our case form. If you were in the last session, you saw the Engagement Hub. We're not using the Engagement Hub. We went live on CRM 2015. When we upgraded to 2016 for support, we stayed with our existing screen form. Our sales is using the Engagement Hub. And then if you were in that last session and you saw the nice layout of what it's going to look like with the Engagement Hub, we'll probably end up shifting into it. So one of the things that I did to start the process of the test was actually to create a clean entry in the test area. So this is the case that I created and documented. This is just obviously a subset of the screen. And then I went in and created one activity of each type so that we'd have a simple set of data. So when Coveo does the first crawl, they can verify based on the information I have from the print screens what that data should look like, see if that data comes back as expected. And then this is kind of a prototype that we did in the first test area. This is what our system will look like, what our result set, I should say, will look like when we bring it back. You'll have the case view, and then you'll have the activities folded underneath it. So those are 2 different sources, but they'll be brought together with the folding. A little bit about best practices, and I said we're not quite live yet, so I'm sure that my best practices and my lessons learned will continue to grow, so maybe this will be updated before we publish. But I did want to share some of what we've learned so far today. So the first part is to identify and assemble a team for that first working session. In our case, that's involved IT, application specialists, end users. There were a lot of folks involved in this process. And especially if you have additional security, there may be other corporate folks that you need to bring into that process. You also want to verify that your CRM license has been added to your Coveo instance, because if you all get together and there's a meeting and you got a working session and you don't have a license for it, you're not going to make very much progress. So that's a real important thing to make sure you get checked up in the beginning. And then you want to identify the volume of data that you've got, which is a little bit challenging for dynamic CRM in the cloud because you don't have direct query to be able to count those. You have to use some third-party tools. So there's a little bit of a challenge sometimes in finding that information. But do take the time to look at that, to figure out how much you've got, and then be prepared to answer and address questions about load. This isn't going to put any load on your production system, but somebody will ask you about that. So be comfortable and prepared to be able to address that question. Usually someone in IT will ask that question. And it's a legitimate question, but usually you're just so focused and so excited to get started that you don't really think about those things. So I'd suggest that take a few moments to think about that. And then you really want to include some end users in your decision process, because there are different perspectives when you're putting together a system like this. I mentioned earlier that you first decide what entities you want, and then what parts of the schema do you want to bring in, and what are you going to index, and then what things are you going to exclude so that you can have an efficient org setup. And that's one perspective from an IT and one perspective from the end user. So you need the end user to say, hey, I need that because I need to be able to find state, or I need to be able to look for this specific information. Because your IT folks are going to want, appropriately so, to make this a very efficient organization and to index the fewest amount of entities possible. And in support, you want to make sure that you've got all the pieces that you're going to need. So it's really important to bring all those folks together. And then finally, I would recommend creating that clean entry so that you give Coveo something they can use as a benchmark to compare against that initial crawl. Some of the lessons learned thus far. I think I mentioned this earlier, but really identifying that test instance and potentially more than one. So in our case, with over 3 million cases, and obviously we're looking at probably 15 million activities, that's too much data to try to do any sort of real sampling for, especially if you need to test out custom fields, extensions, folding, other things, other features in your result set. So do set up that smaller test area if you can or if you need to. During our first configuration session, if those of you who've worked directly with Microsoft, most times they recommend using Fiddler. And what we found in that first working session was that Fiddler actually blocked the web resources. So we were fighting it, trying to diagnose our challenge. So I just share that as something that we ran into. Folding activities under the case we think is going to provide that best result. I showed you that screenshot of our prototype. Even though it doesn't really matter where Coveo surfaces the most relevant result, from a visual perspective, when your agent is on the phone with a customer trying to help them, that presentation of the case with the folding underneath, we found is just more comforting. So it's entirely up to you, but think about what makes a more comfortable work environment for your staff and consider that in the process as you're building that as you're building out your folding choices. Also really need to identify the custom fields on first pass. So we learned two things. The first thing is we have a custom ID, which we didn't share out. So in this example, you see that's a standard CRM case number, which doesn't mean anything to us. We have a 7-digit number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So after Coveo built this for us, we had to actually ask them to go back and bring in the custom ID. The other thing which we didn't consider was the modified date. So I mentioned that we went live with 2.5 million cases on February of last year. Guess what modified date they have? Yeah. So the first result was this beautiful screen with the Microsoft default case number that we use and everything at the same date. So nothing was brought in a decent order. So we had to make some choices on that. So if you have an established system, you probably won't have that challenge. We will always have that challenge because we are constantly acquiring companies to round out our offering. So we're always going to be bringing in batches of data with modified. So we chose another date that works really well for us. And it's a custom date that we had. Oops. Oh, that was the last one, the modified dates. Create a conduit for sharing custom fields and new custom fields. We are trying very hard. This is the first time that we have really had central CRM system across our entire organization of 4,000 employees. We're trying not to create one-off custom fields, but sometimes you need to. So in that process, make sure that as you're bringing on new groups that you know what's out there for custom fields that they can use. And also, if they need to create one, you need to tell somebody, otherwise it's not going to be indexed and you might not be able to search on it. So that communication is really important with acquisitions and with custom data. And then finally, keeping the folding in mind. Most of you probably know that you can have one source folding on a tab, but only one source folding on a tab. So you have to make some decisions. In our case, I mentioned this is a phased approach, and this first case, this first phase is just cases. Well, if I fold, as you saw earlier, the activities under the cases, I'm not going to be able to fold contacts under accounts on the same tab. So what we're actually going to do is bring that in on a cases tab where we bring our legacy items in that don't have detail and just fold the CRM. And then we'll have another opportunity to bring in additional CRM data where we can fold in a different way. So it's a little bit of long-range planning, but think about what are your most important sources to fold and how are you going to organize them. So what's next for us? We hope next year to be able to provide this to our clients. So right now, we don't have a way, not a good way, for our clients to search their cases out in the portal. What we're going to be doing is creating a single sign-on. Right now, we have an external instance of Coveo just in a pilot group, just really in my division clients, so that they can start to look and we can start to learn, work on some UX as well. So we're hoping next year, once we create a single sign-on and we've really got that persona so that we can identify who they are and give a good personalized search experience, that they'll be able to search their cases. So we're looking at that in 2018. We also want to bring the additional entities into the internal UI, so probably our sales staff. Also, it may very well be just for us, for accounts and contacts, but I think probably there's some sales data opportunities and other information that we'll want to bring in for staff as well. And then we want to do the dynamic CRM integration. And those of you in the earlier session saw what that looks like. That's definitely part of our plan. Now that we've seen what's coming in the release, and we're excited about the engagement hub and what that looks like, I think what we'll end up with will be really exciting and be a little bit different than what we thought, but it'll be far superior than what we thought we'd have. So we're very excited to move forward on those initiatives. Any questions for me? Yes.
So, first of all, I was wondering if Dynamics provides you with it. I apologize, I walked in a few minutes late, so if I missed something here, I apologize in advance. But does it have an easy mechanism for exporting case data to seed knowledge articles that then you could index and make available? And related to that, I didn't hear you mention anything about like a case deflection process. Is that something you've got or that you're thinking about, so that people can do searches as against those articles that I'm talking about and existing cases before they log their case?
Great. So let me start first with the export. We have a scribe replication of our existing cloud instance of Dynamic CRM, and that's what we do our SSRS reporting off and any other integrations, because you don't have direct access to the data itself. The direct access within CRM is the advanced find, and that has some limits to what you can export for the, if you're going to export to Excel, it's got count limits. So for example, if I'm trying to do a 6-month analysis, I have to do 3 exports out of Advanced Find, or I can go into the replicated database. So we have that replication. So you've got the data out there, so I would imagine you could do something with that. I think in our case, with respect to what we're going to do to seed knowledge management, I think we really want to let Coveo do what it does really well, and not, I don't think we'll try to force that process. I think as we go live here with CRM and we'll see what Coveo surfaces for relevance for our agents and eventually out to our clients, then we'll start to see what we need to do with that. And I think that's a really, I probably should have put that on the lessons learned, but we're so used to directing things, and especially those of us that have been in the industry for a while, where our support started with a certain personality, and now, as you heard in the opening sessions, it really comes down to that personalized experience. Many of us are still, this is what we're going to do, and we'll tell you what we're going to do, and we'll set it up. And there's a culture change that goes along with that that you need to explore and to appreciate. So I'm looking at this project and saying, I'm not going to tell it anything. I'm going to try not to tell it what to do. I'm going to try to let Coveo do what I know it does well and react to that. So did I answer that first part of the question?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
With respect to case deflection, so at this point, we don't have single sign-on, and I kind of brushed over that a little bit. We do have authentication on our website, and the authentication does, it does validate against CRM, but I call it a faux single sign-on. So it's not a real single sign-on. There's no real persona. There's no purposeful acknowledgement of who you are, what products you have. So while I explain a little bit about who Tyler Technologies is, what you wouldn't have known from that introduction is we basically have 2 layers of every product. So even though through acquisitions we sometimes have more than one, we have 2 court systems. We have 2 tax systems. We have 2 permit systems. We have 2 sets of financials. We have 2 sets of payroll. We have sometimes more than that. But in terms of where we're going and consolidating, we have kind of 2 tiers. So I need to know whether you own my product, which is one tier, or you own another product, which is a different tier, because I don't want to give you the example for putting out a tax bill in my software when we've got another Tyler software that puts out a tax bill in a different way. So in order for us to really do that kind of provide the web self-service that we want to, we needed to start with a new CRM system, which we've now implemented. We need to really create a web self-service, which we're looking for the gains that we have in Coveo to be able to do. Additionally, we are using the analytics, which we just have one client pilot right now, and we'll look at the case deflection analytics as well, but it won't be until a little bit later on, probably into 2018, where we actually create the page so that we can take the search history that Coveo is going to feed before being able to choose create a case. So we're looking at next year being able to do that. It's a long journey for us. As I said, our last system was 10 years old with no contemporary technology and no upgrades. So we're catching up at this point. Did you have a question in the back?
I did, and I think you kind of answered it. I talk to a lot of customers. It's always a challenge between, what do we start with first? Do we start with agents, or do we do web self-service? And you kind of answered that question. And from what I understand, there's no right or wrong answer to that, but I think I kind of understand why you started out that way.
That's a great point, and some of it is a personal journey for me. So we started out, got KCS certified, and said, I'm ready to go. Let's go shop, let's buy some stuff, and let's make it happen. Because of our acquisitions, we just had so much and so many different technologies, so much silo, so much bulk. And we came to the realization probably 6 months into the search that we had to upgrade the CRM system before we could go into knowledge management and web self-service, which was actually really depressing for me because the CRM wasn't my primary project. I was really excited about the KCS. So we diverted our attention, and it took us multiple years to make the selection and pull the trigger for Dynamic CRM. We started this process back in 2013, and we just went live last year, 2016. with CRM. So for us, we just needed to update that CRM because we knew that we were going to need to have a standard system across all of Tyler. Because if you're going to go into web self-service for Tyler, we need to make sure that we know who you are and we're serving the right information to you, or it would have been a failure. It would have been disappointing. It certainly wouldn't have been better than what we have now. At least now we have pages by product, so we can at least somewhat direct you. Not in a very comfortable way, but certainly better than just sending you into a big vat of Tyler and saying, good luck, figure out what you want to have. So for us, we had to kind of shift gears and reverse. On the plus side, by doing that, I had the opportunity to discover Coveo, and which has been just a really exciting journey for me, and it's been a lot of fun. I use it every day. We don't even have the primary sources that we need, and I use it every day. My vice president uses it every day. It's really fun, but your journey may be different. Everyone's journey may very well be different. Yes.
You're an acquisitive company, as you say. You've grown by adding a lot of other firms. Do you have an approach, a process, a methodology going forward for subsequent acquisitions? How do you weave them in?
Absolutely. So the question is, how do we choose acquisitions? We really look at, as I think most companies do, at our landscape and determine where in a process do we have a hole. So for example, last year we acquired New World Systems and we acquired ExecuTime. So we didn't have time entry. We had in our software, we had written some time entry, but we're not, and we would take import files for like Kronos or other time entry systems, but we didn't have a real time entry system where we could really integrate with contemporary technology. So that's a hole that we had, so we were looking to fill. One of the things we've learned over the years in acquisition is we don't acquire companies that want to be acquired. So that's generally, I mean, it makes sense to you, doesn't it? If somebody's dying to be bought out, there's probably something not quite right. We're looking for companies that were like ours. When we were acquired a little over 10 years ago, we're looking for companies that are leaders in the marketplace, that are thought leaders, that have something interesting and exciting to offer our clients. We want to be an ERP solution. We want a client to be able to come to Tyler and have everything they need. We're not going to be best in breed in every single area, and we're not trying to be either. So part of that landscape is deciding what areas do we need to be best in breed in, what areas do we need different levels, and just really need to plug a hole to get through the entire journey. So I hope that answers your question.
And maybe to add on to it, from a support point of view then, how does that manifest itself for your agents? I mean, do you tend to then have to support, or are your agents having to support yet another new tract of information, timekeeping apps, whatever they are, that they knew nothing about before, or do they tend to stay separate for a while?
So that's a great question. How are our support organizations set up? We have just about 1,000 folks across 5 different divisions in, 50 to 100 product lines. And for the most part, we do exist separately. But there are other pieces that are together. So for example, we have a group out of Colorado that does document imaging. Well, all of the Tyler products have some need for document imaging, for storage, for scanning your accounts payable before you cut those checks, for scanning your direct deposit. If you think about just, giving my group as an example, if I am a resident of a town that uses my application and my county or my city also uses the self-service, I can actually self-serve at 9 o'clock at night. I can get my last pay stub if the mortgage company needs it. I can get my tax bill online if I need that. So I can do that whole transaction of buying a house or selling a house without ever having to step foot into the town office. And isn't that really our goal? Who has time to go and do that? The town offices don't necessarily have the most convenient hours depending on what your business hours are. So to be able to do all of that online for your constituents, to be able to sit here at my dining room table with a cup of coffee and say, oh, the bus just picked up my child. That's good. Oh, the bus just dropped off my child. To have that complete connectivity. The same thing with with being able to tell whether children are getting on and off the bus at the same time. So, so there definitely are some cases like the imaging where we're all going to use it. And so that group becomes tier 2. So my group would take the first call, and then if there was an issue that wasn't in our application, we would form transfer or work with the other group for tier 2. And the same way that we're tier 2 for other applications. So we're trying to develop more Tyler-wide applications, and the group that has that application is usually the second tier. Not always, but generally the second tier. So the question is, how are we looking at the metrics to do return on investment and tie that back to salary? We're not that sophisticated yet. We're at a point where, for example, my group doesn't have staff additions this year. So we have a 10% increase in calls. How's that going to happen? It's going to happen by being more efficient, by having knowledge, by having tools that take care of that. So our conjecture from what we've seen through the proof of concept and what we believe to be true is that if we can improve that first contact resolution, we'll get that customer satisfaction and be able to use that as part of our measure. We've done, it's been a couple years since we benchmark and did our cost. I think earlier we heard, what was it, $400 was the cost per case. Ours was a little less just because I wouldn't say that we're necessarily at an ideal staffing. We tend to be a fairly lean organization. But if you, when we benchmark again this year, we hope to be able to use some of those statistics to calculate out that value. I think right now it really comes down to raw salary dollars. What did we need to add or didn't add to keep that customer satisfaction the same or raising higher? So it's really, the metrics is really a new journey for us. I have a couple of others that I'm looking for, but I really want to see the dynamic CRM for a quarter before I have a little better feel for what I really think the difference is going to be in our organizations.
Thanks everyone,
Very good.
and thank you, Patty, for sharing your journey with us.